They were dying. Not slowly, not quietly, but in fire, screams, and airless silence. The Varians had once been proud, even arrogant, calling themselves the architects of the outer colonies. Now their cities floated in ruins above a cracked, red world. A planet strangled by a siege that had lasted too long, too brutally. And the galaxy? It watched. No one helped. Not the Delari Consortium, with their fleets built from stolen labor. Not the highborn Sindari, who saw suffering as a statistic. The Varians had once stood tall in the Council of Worlds. But when the Krell descended on them like wolves, every so-called ally turned their heads. They said the Varians brought it on themselves. They said they weren't strategic enough to defend their own borders. They said survival of the fittest. But Earth remembered. Earth remembered what it felt like to be cornered, to be small, to be mocked for primitive thinking, to be ignored while bleeding out in the dark. And not everyone on Earth had forgotten the Varians' kindness decades ago, the way they'd lent ships to rescue a crippled human colony when no one else would, the way they trained our first space medics, the way they gave us tech they didn't have to share. I remembered it. My name is Beck. Just Beck, captain of the Terran warship Sovereign Resolve, and the first man in the human fleet to break the blockade around Virian space. The day I ordered my crew into that hell, I knew what it meant. Treason by the Galactic Council's laws. Suicide by everyone else's. But I wasn't about to sit on my hands while cowards watched an entire species get turned to ash. They called us reckless. They said, "Why fight someone else's war?" But I didn't care. I'd fought in Earth's black dust rebellions. I'd seen children coughing up blood because of what rich planets called economic pressure. And I wasn't about to let history repeat itself, not while I still had command of a ship. We broke the perimeter on a cold drift, cloaked in silence. The Krell didn't expect humans. We weren't part of the Council's military elite. We weren't strategically significant. That was their mistake. We tore through the first Krell cruiser with EMP torpedoes. Its shields crackled like shattering glass. 2 more ships followed. My weapons officer, Decker, screamed coordinates while his hands bled from the heat of failing consoles. The crew fought like they had something to prove. Because we did. In the comms, we heard the Varian distress calls. Weak, broken signals buried in static. "We are dying. Any help? Please." And that was all we needed. We dropped supplies to the surface under enemy fire. Oxygen packs, food, medical crates. We didn't have much, just what we could carry. But to them, it might as well have been gold. They called us angels, heroes. We weren't. We were just angry. And then something happened. Something no one expected. Other human ships joined. Not military vessels. Freighters, scavengers, old miners with rusted engines, civilian crews with nothing to gain but everything to lose. They came out of nowhere, slipping past blockades and dropping aid wherever they could. One of them even painted a message across their hull in massive spray paint strokes. "We stand with you." The galaxy noticed. The Council spat threats, called us insurgents, pirates. They said we were destabilizing the peace, as if peace was ever real when it only protected the powerful. But we didn't stop. We didn't ask for permission. We were human, and we remembered what it felt like to be left to die. And maybe that's why, in that moment, as our ship circled the burning Varian capital, defending it with everything we had, humanity wasn't just fighting for them. We were fighting for who we used to be, for who we refused to become. And for once, the stars echoed with something more than silence. They echoed with defiance. The bridge of the Sovereign Resolve stank of sweat, blood, and scorched insulation. Our hull groaned under every hit, every turn, every desperate leap through plasma fields. But we were still alive, and so were the Varians on the surface. for now. "Captain," Decker said, his voice rasping through a cracked comms mic. "We lost the starboard vent thrusters. Manual overrides fried. Helm's running with half-assed compensation. How long can we keep maneuvering?" He looked at me like I'd asked if rocks could bleed. "We're running on grit and prayer, sir. Good enough. Keep her steady. I don't care if you have to duct tape the damn controls to do it." He gave a short nod and turned back to his console. His hands were still bleeding. No time to bandage them. No time for anything. We had 30 minutes before the next Krell squadron would hit our location. I had a decision to make, one I'd hoped I'd never have to. Do we push in deeper and risk losing the ship? Or hold the line and wait for reinforcements, if they even came? I opened a private channel to the lower decks. My chief engineer, Ramos, picked up on the second ping. "How bad?" I asked. "Worse than you think. Primary power is running off reserves. Fusion core's unstable, and the coolant loop's spiking. If it ruptures, we'll be a fireball." I rubbed my temple. "What if we eject the core?" "Then we lose shields. And if we lose shields while surrounded..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew what that meant. "Stabilize it as best you can. I'm not done here." There was a pause. "Neither am I, sir." When the line cut off, I stared at the viewport. Varian Fu floated beneath us like a bleeding heart, its atmosphere streaked with black scars. Cities burned in spiraling crimson clouds, their lights flickering like dying embers. Every time I looked, it reminded me of Earth during the dust rebellions. The sky choked with ash, buildings toppling. People screaming for water that never came. History didn't repeat itself. It just recycled the pain with different names. "Incoming transmission, patching through," Decker said. The screen flickered, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw the face of a Virian leader. Her skin was a muted bronze, etched with scales. One eye was bloodshot and the other swollen shut. But she still looked proud. "Human captain," she rasped. "You defy your own kind. For us." I nodded. "You once saved our dying colony. We remember." She smiled bitterly. "Your courage will cost you." "Everything worth doing does." She tilted her head as if studying me. "We've gathered what's left of our command. We have one functioning outpost in the southern hemisphere, a launch facility beneath the old ice canyons. If we can get the wounded there, we can evacuate some. How many?" "Not enough." I clenched my jaw. "We'll help you get there." That would mean suicide. I leaned forward. "Lady, we passed suicide 10 hours ago." She gave a single nod. No more wasted words. As the line cut, I turned to my comms officer. "Get the word out to the others, all Terran vessels, civilian or not." He hesitated. "Sir, they're not soldiers." "They're humans. That's enough." He nodded, fingers dancing across his console. The message we sent was short, blunt, and unmistakable. "To all Terran ships in system, Varian outpost located, coordinates locked, evac in motion. If you're still standing, get to that ice canyon. We end this together. Captain Beck, Sovereign resolve." It only took minutes to get answers. One by one, the replies came in. "This is Crimson Mule. We're with you. Wayfarer 2 en route, loaded with med units and ammo. Freighter Annie's Ghost, small cargo bay, but we've got fire in our gut." Even the civilian ships, barely held together with rust and defiance, turned toward the canyon. No hesitation, no begging for help, just commitment. I never felt more proud to be human than in that moment. We flew low, through the planet's upper atmosphere, riding turbulence like wild animals. Below us, the canyon yawned open, a frozen scar across the red landscape, its mouth obscured by fog and dust. Anti-air cannons still stood at the rim, shattered and dead. but radar showed movement below. Friendly signatures. We weren't the first to arrive. A few Virian skimmers hovered near the base, their engines flickering. Refugees, half-starved, half-burnt, staggered toward the launch ramp. The outpost was failing. The shield dome around it sparked and sputtered. Its backup generator could blow at any moment. "We land, we load, we get out," I barked. "Priority goes to wounded and children." Decker turned. "Sir, we can't carry more than 30, maybe less." "Then we make more room." "How?" "Dump all non-essential cargo. Weapons crates, furniture, the rec system. Hell, throw my damn bunk out the airlock if you have to." I meant it. If it wasn't bolted down and didn't save a life, it went. As the ship descended, Krell fighters screamed across the horizon. 3 of them locked onto us immediately. Their engines were faster, their weapons hotter. But we were angry and desperate. We spun mid-air and dropped countermeasures, releasing a barrage of flares. 2 missiles hit decoys. 1 clipped our wing. Sovereign resolve shook like it was about to break in half. Sparks flew across the bridge. Decker screamed something about stabilizers. I couldn't hear. My ears rang. But we didn't crash. We skidded onto the outpost platform like a drunk bear on ice, slamming into a fuel tank and rupturing the side hatch. Crew tumbled out. So did I. We hit the ground running, weapons drawn. Krell infantry were already coming in from the east side of the canyon. Long, spindly bastards with green glass eyes and rifles that melted bone. I gunned the first one down from 10 meters. My rifle hissed and shook in my grip. Blood, or whatever passed for Krell blood, splattered across my armor. Ramos had a sidearm in one hand and a wrench in the other. "Sir, core's still holding. Barely, but we won't get a second launch." "Then we only need 1. He nodded and disappeared back into the ship. Behind us, civilians poured into the hold. Virian children clung to their mothers, their tiny faces smeared with ash and dried tears. Medics lifted stretchers. Some of the wounded didn't make it to the ramp before falling still. We were losing them. Fast. Another human ship landed beside us. Annie's ghost. Her hull looked like someone had built it out of spare car parts and old barn doors. But she didn't hesitate either. Her crew, 4 men and 1 woman, spilled out and began grabbing refugees like cargo, dragging them to safety. A Krell sniper took one of them out. Clean headshot. He crumpled. No one stopped. Not even his brother, who only paused to grab his rifle before continuing the load-up. That's how humans fight, with rage and sorrow intertwined. We'd taken most of the canyon by the time the Krell sent their big guns. A ground crawler, massive, plated in armor, rolling in like a mobile factory, powered over the eastern ridge and opened fire. Our makeshift defense line vanished in one blast. We lost 8 people. "Beck, we need air support!" Decker yelled over comms. "There is no support!" I shouted. "We are the goddamn support!" Then I saw it. An old missile turret, half buried in ice. Maybe 50 years old, rusted and unused. But maybe. "Ramos, get to that turret on the east ridge. Try to rewire it." "Sir, I'm an engineer, not a... Today you're artillery." He ran. The crawler crept closer. Krell units followed behind it like roaches. Their weapons hissed and screeched. The canyon echoed with the sound of doom. And then, a deep hum, a shriek, a sudden whoomp. The turret fired. It wasn't precise, it wasn't elegant, but it was loud, and it was damn effective. The missile slammed into the crawler's flank, sending it rolling into the canyon wall. A fireball erupted from its core, swallowing half the ridge. The Krell fell back. I could hardly believe it. Our crew cheered. Some dropped to their knees, others cried. The air smelled of ash and oil and survival. We didn't have time to rest. The wounded were still loading. By the time we closed the hatch, The Resolve had 42 souls aboard, 12 more than we could handle. I didn't care. We took off with sparks flying from the rear engines. As we ascended into the stratosphere, the Council finally made its move. A message blinked onto our comms. "You are in violation of Interstellar War Protocol. Stand down or be fired upon." I stared at it, read it 3 times. Then I spat on the floor and switched off the comms. They could call us traitors, terrorists, fools, but to those kids in the back of my ship, we were human, and that meant something again. We didn't speak for a long time. The Sovereign Resolve rattled like an old freight train, barely holding itself together. The wounded moaned in the cargo bay. A child screamed once, then went quiet. Even our engines, usually a constant low hum, now stuttered and groaned like they were dying with us. Decker leaned back in his chair, eyes sunken and hands still raw from burns. Blood crusted over his knuckles, but he didn't seem to notice. Ramos lay on the floor near the engineering hatch, passed out from exhaustion, still wearing a welding mask pushed up on his forehead. We were alive, and that was about the only thing we had going for us. I looked out the viewport. Behind us, Varian-Fur was just a red dot, a burning memory, and ahead, just black space. Cold, empty, the kind of dark you feel in your bones. But it was better than what we left behind. I opened the internal comms. "All hands," I said. My voice felt like sandpaper. "Good work. Rest if you can. Eat if you need to. But keep one eye open. We're not out of this yet." I cut the line. "Where to?" Decker asked, not looking at me. "Nowhere safe." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Story of our lives." The thing about defying a galactic power structure, especially one built on centuries of fear and manipulation, is that they don't argue, they don't negotiate, they punish. And that punishment was coming. The Council wasn't made of warriors, it was made of bureaucrats, bankers. Aristocrats hiding behind laws written in blood they didn't shed. But when they wanted something erased, they paid others to do it. And I knew damn well who they'd hire now. The Paladins. They weren't noble. They weren't righteous. Hell, most of them weren't even loyal to anything but money. But they were efficient. Mercenary fleets with enough firepower to level moons. And once they were called in, no one survived. No prisoners, no trials, just ash. A blinking signal interrupted my thoughts. Not Council code, something else. A ship, coming up fast. "Decker," I snapped, "identify that blip." He tapped the console and the data came up. One vessel, small, fast, human-made, but unfamiliar. Modified beyond standard registry. It hailed us. "Put it on." The screen flickered. A face appeared, rough-bearded, scarred, eyes cold like space itself. Not Council, not military, but I knew the type. One of ours, Earthborn, battle-hardened. "This Captain Beck?" the man said. I nodded. "Who's asking?" "Name's Troy." He paused. "Used to fly salvage out past Saturn. Saw what you did, heard the transmission, figured I'd come see if the stories were true." "They're worse," he smirked. "Good. I brought friends." The screen split. Dozens of blips lit up our radar. Ships coming out of stealth range, freighters, gunboats, haulers, all human, all off-grid. They weren't part of Earth's defense fleet. These were the ghosts, the outlaws, the ones who didn't follow the rules and because the rules had never protected them. One of them transmitted a message. "We're with you, Beck. You saved them. Now we save you." I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long fighting with a skeleton crew that I forgot what it felt like to not be alone. And yet, this was just the beginning. We linked with Troy's fleet near a shattered asteroid belt, old mining territory, abandoned after a collapse 10 years ago. It wasn't safe, but it was quiet. The Resolve docked against one of the larger haulers. We rigged makeshift medical bays and offloaded the wounded. Virian doctors, barely hanging on themselves, took over treatment. I stood on the external platform, helmet off, letting the cold bite at my skin. The stars above me didn't care. The universe didn't care. But the people here did, and that was enough. Troy joined me, lighting a cigarette like we weren't being hunted. "You know the Council's got bounty posters on you already?" he said, smoke curling from his mouth. "Wouldn't be the first." "Yeah, but this time the price is a fleet. They want your head so bad they're offering fuel contracts and amnesty for anyone who brings you in." I turned to him. "You here for the reward?" He laughed. "If I was, you'd already be dead. No, I'm here because I hate them more than I fear them. And you? You just gave every lowlife in the galaxy a reason to stand up. I didn't do it to inspire anyone. Doesn't matter why you did it. What matters is now everyone knows." He pointed to a nearby screen. Crude video footage of the canyon battle. Someone must have filmed it from the Annie's Ghost. It showed humans fighting back, dragging wounded to ships, shielding kids with their own bodies. It showed us. It had already gone viral on the human underground networks. "You started something, Beck," Troy said. "And you can't stop it now." I knew he was right. That night, if you can call anything night in space, I tried to sleep. Couldn't. My dreams were full of fire and glass-eyed Krell, of council agents burning families in the name of order, of children screaming as airlocks vented. But one dream stood out. I was back on Earth. Back before I joined the fleet, sitting in a broken-down bar in Detroit, watching the rain hit the windows. A woman sat across from me, someone I once cared about, long gone now. She looked at me with sadness in her eyes. "You were always going to burn for someone else's war," she whispered. Maybe she was right. I woke to alarms. "Captain to the bridge, repeat, Captain to the bridge." I bolted upright, pulled on my gear, and sprinted to the command center. Decker met me at the hatch, pale-faced. "They found us." "Who?" He didn't answer, just pointed. The radar was lit up like a Christmas tree. One ship, huge, sleek, built like a predator, hovered just outside the asteroid field. The Exactor, Paladin flagship. They'd sent one of their elite fleets already. That fast. "Defensive protocols are live," Decker said, hands flying over the panel. "Troy's fleet is scrambling fighters." "We don't have the firepower to stop them." "Nope." "We hold the line anyway." He grinned through clenched teeth. "Of course we do." Troy's voice came over comms. "We've faced worse than these merc pricks. Let's show 'em what humanity's gutter-born can do." I opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Beck. If you're scared, you're not alone. If you're tired, so are we. But that Paladin warship? It's not invincible. It's just metal. Just circuits. It bleeds like anything else, and it burns like hell when you hit it right." I paused. "They want to make an example out of us. So let's give them a damn good story to tell." The battle began seconds later. Fighter drones screamed into the asteroid field. Gunfire ripped through rock. Explosions sent debris tumbling. The Sovereign Resolve launched her remaining torpedoes, hitting fast, hard, and then vanishing behind cover. We fought dirty. No formation, no hierarchy, just survival. But the Paladins didn't know how to fight chaos. They were trained to crush armies, not insurgents, not pissed-off civilians with nothing to lose. And we made them bleed. Annie's Ghost rammed one of their cruisers head-on, detonating her core and taking 10 enemy drones with her. No survivors. They knew it going in. A kid in a retrofitted mining rig took out a Paladin gunboat by faking a distress signal, then jamming a live plasma drill into its hull when they tried to board. They weren't warriors. They were humans, and they were angry. But the Exactor didn't flinch. It unleashed a blast that tore through 3 of our ships in seconds. No warning, No mercy. We were losing ground. "Beck, we can't hold this," Decker shouted. "They're too strong." I clenched my fists, looked at the Varian children huddled near the med bay, at the bleeding volunteers working double time to save strangers. Then I made a choice. "Patch me through to the Paladin commander." Decker hesitated. "You serious? Now." The screen flickered. A woman appeared, steel-eyed, silver armor, face like a tombstone. "Captain Beck," she said. "Ready to die?" I leaned in. "Not before I tell the galaxy who you're about to kill." She didn't respond. I kept going. "You're not blowing up warships. You're slaughtering refugees, children, medics, volunteers. I'll transmit every last second of this battle to every human system from here to Titan. Every Council-loyal ship that backs you will wear that shame like a badge." Her jaw tightened. "This war's bigger than you, Beck." "No," I growled. "It's smaller. It's one ship, one choice, and right now the galaxy is watching you." She stared. Then the line cut. A pause. Then silence. The exactor stopped firing, retreated. We didn't win, not really, but we survived. And sometimes that's the only kind of victory you get in a galaxy this cruel. The silence after battle is never peaceful. It's tense, hollow, like a breath held too long, waiting to shatter. We watched the exactor fade into the black, leaving only scorched metal and drifting corpses behind. Half of our fleet was gone. Annie's ghost was space dust. 3 civilian haulers had been breached. No survivors. And the few still flying were running low on fuel, munitions, or both. Troy patched into the Sovereign Resolve's bridge, his image shaky, his cheek split open and bleeding. "She pulled back," he said, voice hoarse. "But don't think that was surrender. They're regrouping. That was a warning." I nodded. And we heard it loud and clear. "What now, Beck?" That question weighed heavier than any bullet. We were fugitives now. Every ship that had helped us, even the ones just delivering food, was marked. No one could return to Council ports. No docking, no trade, no repair. Not without being arrested, executed, or both. And yet, we had started something. Across the independent channels, stories of our defiance were spreading like a virus the Council couldn't contain. Videos, audio leaks, survivor interviews. People weren't just watching. They were choosing sides. "I've got 32 new ships requesting rendezvous," Decker told me. "All Terran. Some from Mars rings, some from asteroid colonies. Combat ready?" Most aren't, but they're coming anyway. Of course they were. The Council had ruled with an iron fist for too long. Oppression was a slow poison, and we had just triggered the first wave of vomiting. Now humanity wanted to purge the whole system. But rebellion wasn't romantic. It was ugly, and soon it would be personal. I called a meeting on the Resolve's lower deck, what used to be our cargo hold, now half converted into a temporary war room. Holograms flickered overhead. System maps, supply routes, refugee lists. Exhausted crews stood around crates, some still bandaged, some still limping. Troy sat on a steel barrel, arms crossed, jaw tight. "We lost too many," I began, "and more are coming. But this isn't just about survival anymore." Murmurs, nods, a few skeptical looks. "This is about showing the galaxy that humanity doesn't kneel to cowards, that we don't turn our backs when innocent lives are burned for convenience. We're done watching, done obeying." A woman from Wayfarer 2 stepped forward, older, face lined with battle scars. "So what's the endgame? We keep shooting until they finally nuke us into atoms?" "No," I said. "We don't survive this by waiting for them to corner us. We need leverage. We need a goddamn voice loud enough that even the Council can't silence it." Troy grunted. "And where exactly do we find that?" "Earth. The room went quiet. I let the word hang there, heavy like a loaded weapon. Earth still has a seat in the Council. They pretend neutrality, but they've always played both sides. We force their hand. If Earth backs us, others will follow. Colonies, rogue systems, fringe worlds. We won't just be rebels anymore. We'll be a movement. Someone scoffed. Earth won't risk war. They're already in it, I snapped. They just haven't admitted it yet. I brought up a hologram of Earth orbit. Satellite networks, military stations, trade beacons. It was still the single most watched and guarded planet in the sector. But it had weaknesses, especially political ones. There's one man in Earth's civilian council who has a history of opposing the Council of Worlds, I continued. Director Harvin Rowe, military background, lost his daughter during a council-sanctioned bombing on Ceta Prime. He's been a thorn in their side for years. Decker tilted his head. So we ask for help? No, I said. We bring him proof that the Council abandoned the Varians, that they tried to kill refugees, that they ordered the Paladins to fire on civilians, and we do it in front of Earth's population, live. Troy leaned forward. You want to sneak a war criminal into Earth's capital and make him confess on live broadcast? Not sneak. Drag him there in chains. Another pause. And who's going to talk? Decker asked. Who's going to risk their neck that far inside enemy space? I am. Every head turned. Decker was the first to speak. Beck, no. I started this. I carry it. I face them. You walk into Earth's capital with a target on your back. You won't even make it past orbit. They'll fry you before you hit atmosphere. I smiled grimly. Not if I bring the right package. Troy understood first. You're talking about a prisoner. I nodded. The Paladins won't stop hunting us, so we take one, interrogate, record everything, then deliver it to Earth with a message. Humanity doesn't forget, and we don't forgive. The plan was madness, but the kind of madness that could break systems. 3 days later, we had a lead. A Paladin courier ship, fast, lightly armored, traveling with encrypted logs from the last skirmish. We intercepted it near the rings of Verdan 9. A short, brutal ambush. We disabled engines and boarded before the crew could initiate self-destruct. Only one officer survived capture. Commander Neth Voss, arrogant, ice-blooded, thought himself untouchable. We threw him in a reinforced cell aboard the Resolve. No luxury, no lawyer, just truth. I walked in alone. Lights low, audio recorders rolling. You're going to Earth, I told him. Alive? He smirked. You think you'll make it past orbit with me on board? No, I know I will, because you're going to help me. He chuckled. And why the hell would I do that? I leaned in close, voice calm, flat, dangerous. Because I've seen what you bastards do to planets you don't like. I've heard the screams from mining colonies deemed inefficient. And I've watched kids choke on vacuum because you wanted a clean report. His smirk faded. You think the galaxy cares about those people? He said, sneering. They're dirt, replaceable. You're risking everything for insects. No, I said, I'm ending everything. For men like you. Then I hit the console and played his own ship's logs. Command orders. Council channels. One voice, clear as day. Use overwhelming force. No survivors, no witnesses. The bastard's expression cracked. For the first time, I saw fear. You're not taking me to Earth, he said. You're making me a scapegoat. No, I corrected. I'm making you proof. And with that, I turned and walked out. We launched 2 days later. A small ship. Stealth core. No weapons. Just me, Decker, and the prisoner, sedated and chained to a grav chair. We broke Earth orbit on silent approach, masked by solar interference. Of course they saw us eventually. Their orbital command scrambled fighters. We didn't run. We transmitted a live broadcast, encrypted but wideband, the kind of signal every newsnet and civilian feed couldn't resist. "People of Earth," I said, staring into the lens. "You've heard the rumors. Now hear the truth." I hit play. The logs, the footage, the confessions, the screaming refugees, the Paladin orders, the retreat of the Exactor, all of it. The feed was raw, bloody, real, and Earth ate it up. We were intercepted before landing, hauled out at gunpoint. But I saw the hesitation in the soldiers' eyes. They weren't sure if we were enemies anymore. The truth had cracked something open. They didn't kill us. They handed us over to council authorities. But by then, the damage was done. Riots broke out within hours. Peaceful protests turned into blockades. The council's Terran representatives were booed out of public chambers. Rowe made his first public statement in 3 years. "If the council has no shame, then Earth must have the spine to stand." By the time they threw me in a holding cell, I knew we'd lit the match. The cell was small, no windows, no air vents I could see. The lights never dimmed, the temperature never changed, and the silence felt like it was pressing on my lungs. It wasn't a prison cell. It was a waiting room for execution. I sat on the floor, back against cold alloy walls, trying not to sleep. I hadn't closed my eyes in over 30 hours. Not since we touched down on Earth, handed over like some relic to a broken government. But exhaustion meant dreams, and dreams meant screams, burned planets, shattered fleets, dying kids. I didn't want that. A soft buzz broke the quiet. The door opened. 2 men entered. No uniforms, no names, but I knew the type. Bureau security. Gray suits, sterile eyes, weapons visible and intentional. One spoke. "On your feet." I stood without a word. They escorted me through sterile, white corridors, long, curved halls with no signs, no directions, only the hum of machinery and the occasional flicker of surveillance drones overhead. We arrived at a wide door. It opened to reveal a chamber like something out of a corporate museum. Long obsidian table, 8 chairs, projectors humming in the corners, surveillance glass behind them. You could feel the watchers, even if you couldn't see them. At the far end of the table sat Director Harvin Rowe. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him on any feed. Skin pale, hair gray, and cut military short. His eyes, though, still steel, still sharp. He didn't stand. "Captain Beck," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please." I sat. The agent stayed behind me, unmoving. Rowe leaned forward, folding his hands. "I've seen everything you transmitted," he said. "The footage, the logs, the confession." I said nothing. "I'll admit, you're either the dumbest man I've ever seen, or the bravest. Maybe both." He smiled slightly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Do you know what's happening outside this building?" "No." "Cities are burning. Protesters are shutting down mag rail stations. Council embassies have been torched in 2 major capitals. They're calling it the Red Wave." I nodded slowly. "You lit a match," he said, "and now the fire's eating its way across the continent." "I didn't ask for a rebellion," I said. "I just refuse to let cowards murder children." Rowe's face darkened. "You made Earth choose, Beck. You dragged us out of our neutrality and forced our hand." "Good." He narrowed his eyes. "You realize what happens next, don't you?" "I get executed. The council sends a message. End of story." "No," he said. "That's what the council wants. But I have another idea." That got my attention. "I'm listening." Rowe stood and walked to the glass wall. His reflection hovered beside mine. The council overplayed their hand. The Paladin orders, the refugee massacres, all of it. They thought Earth would stay silent like always. But we can't. Not now. He turned. I want you to lead the resistance. I blinked. What? You already are, he said. The colonies chant your name like a war cry. Ships are defecting from Council-aligned fleets every day. You're the face of this movement, whether you want it or not. I'm not a politician. I'm not asking for speeches, Rowe said. I'm asking for results. Tactical victories, controlled strikes, real leadership. And you'll back me? I already have. He activated the projector. A list appeared. Ship manifests, encrypted frequencies, supply chains. You've got 97 vessels waiting off Europa's orbit, he said. All flying rogue tags, half are civilian. The other half, well, they used to answer to Earth's defense network, until last night. I stared at the data. It was real, verified. My blood ran cold. This is a war, Rowe continued. Not a protest, not a rally. And wars need generals. You can't be a martyr now, Beck. We need you alive. He let the silence hang. Then he dropped the real bomb. We've uncovered something, he said. Something worse than what you've seen. The Council isn't just wiping out refugees. They're developing a fail-safe, a sterilization protocol. Bio-targeted, AI-deployed, designed to eliminate non-compliant species from entire systems. And it's already in testing? I didn't speak. He handed me a small drive. Coordinates, files, names, it's all here. The lab is on a deep space research station outside Council jurisdiction. Officially, it doesn't exist. What do you want me to do? Blow it to hell. And if I get caught? You won't. He turned to the guards. Get him geared, patch him to command, and tell the fleet the fire is lit. 6 hours later, I was back in space. Not in the Sovereign Resolve. She was still grounded, being repaired with parts stolen from scrapyards. I flew aboard a smaller vessel, the Fist of Dust, a repurposed prison ship fitted with stealth plating and new engines that rattled with power. Troy met me on the bridge. Didn't think I'd see you again, he said, clapping my shoulder. They said you were already in a hole 6 feet deep. They weren't far off. He looked at the drive in my hand. New target? Worse than before. He didn't ask questions. That's what I liked about Troy. He didn't need a reason to fight, just a clear enemy and enough ammo to burn the bastard down. We jumped 2 days later. The coordinates took us to a dead system. No suns, no habitable planets, just rocks and frozen dust. The research station hovered in orbit around a shattered moon. It was sleek, sterile, silent. The kind of place people were brought to die without records. The approach was clean. No defense grid, no warning beacons. But we knew better. I count 5 ships in cloak range, Decker said, voice tight over comms. 2 gunboats, 1 long-range missile cruiser. They're waiting. Then we don't knock, I said. We dropped out of stealth fast, jamming signals, firing EMPs before the station could call for backup. The gunboats took the first wave, shaken by our surprise. The cruiser turned too slow. We boarded the station through a decompressed cargo bay. Inside was hell. Sterile white walls smeared with blood, labs torn apart. Bodies, scientists, technicians, guards, all executed. What the hell happened here? Troy whispered. We moved deeper. Data cores still active, experiment rooms still powered. And then we found it. The chamber. Rows of glass pods, hundreds. Inside them, not corpses, not aliens, humans. Malnourished, injected, tagged with data labels, aggression level, mutation response, resilience rate. They were testing the protocol on our own people. This can't be real, Decker said, stepping back. It was real. I accessed the mainframe, files unzipped in seconds. The Council had authorized Project Lustrum nearly a decade ago, a preemptive genocide failsafe for use in case of rebellion, designed to be species-specific, invisible, and irreversible. And they were testing it on political prisoners and prisoners of war. This was never just about the Varians. They were warming up on them. Humanity was next. I downloaded everything, wiped the backups, set thermal charges on every console. As we made our way out, the first surviving test subject opened their eyes. A girl, maybe 17, bones sharp under her skin. Her voice was dry as ash. "Are we free?" I swallowed. "Not yet, but we're getting there." We returned to Europa with the evidence. Rowe went public in minutes. This time he didn't ask permission. This isn't diplomacy anymore. It's survival. The Council doesn't negotiate with resistance. It sterilizes it. But we are not insects. We are not errors in their system. We are humanity. And we don't go quietly. Earth withdrew from the Council that night. 3 more worlds followed within days, and the first official battles of the Human Independence War began. But I didn't celebrate. I stood in silence, watching the stars, wondering how many more lives would burn before we ever saw peace. We weren't rebels anymore. We were revolutionaries, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The war didn't come with a siren. It came quietly, like a rumor, a whisper on encrypted channels, a missing convoy here, a blockade there, ships that stopped answering, stations gone dark. But when the Council made their first counterstrike, no one doubted it anymore. It started on Vega 3, a trade colony, neutral, mostly Terran descended, one of the only outposts still open to both Council-aligned and rebel ships, a place where black market med shipments moved through back doors and starving refugees found at least a breath of clean air. They glassed it in 17 minutes. Orbital fire, no warning, no declaration, over 90,000 dead. And they blamed us, said the rebels had smuggled weapons through the Vega corridor, called it a necessary purge. The message was clear. Feed the rebellion, and you die with it. I saw the footage from orbit. Ash rising like smoke signals to a god that never answered. Streets vaporized, children frozen mid-run by thermal shock. And I knew this was only the beginning. We moved the fleet that same night. Every human-born ship still breathing converged on the asteroid fields behind Callisto. Our engineers called it the graveyard, a maze of shattered ice and mining rigs that had collapsed 2 decades ago. Perfect for hiding, terrible for morale. The Sovereign Resolve had just come out of dry dock. She looked worse than I remembered, her hull patched with scrap from 6 different ships, but she still flew. Decker had overhauled the internal systems. Ramos had salvaged an old AI core from a derelict Martian corvette. It wasn't smart, but it could manage life support and targeting. We needed every edge. I stood at the front of the war room, looking over the crew. More people now. The original core was still here. Decker, Ramos, Troy. But there were new faces, too. Some young, some scarred, all angry. I spoke plainly. They've started killing civilians, openly, without shame, which means they think they've already won. Silence. They think we'll cave, that we'll scatter, that we're too disorganized, too emotional, that we'll eat each other before we ever hit back. I pointed to the holomap. A new objective lit up. An industrial planet called Narix, the primary fuel refinery for the Paladin fleets. It produced over 40% of the Council's deep space plasma cells, protected by 2 defense rings and 3 warships. "We hit it," murmurs rippled, some sharp inhales. "They'll retaliate," Decker said. "Tenfold." "I know. You're sure it's worth it?" "I'm not sure about anything anymore," I admitted. "But every time we let them dictate the pace, more people die." Troy grunted. "Then we bleed them, hard," I nodded. "We send a message. They burn our civilians, we burn their fuel." The Narix operation was suicide. We had 40 ships. They had double that, and automated drones patrolling the high orbit lanes. But we didn't play by their rules. We came in low, using freighter signals, masking our ID tags as corporate junkers. The Paladins weren't looking for war fleets in garbage haulers. By the time they realized what hit them, we were inside the atmosphere. Resolve led the drop team. We broke through a mining shaft on the southern pole, an old access route sealed decades ago due to seismic risk. Ramos rigged charges to reopen it. Our landers shot down the tunnel at breakneck speed, slamming into lower platforms where refinery controls were kept. We came out shooting. The refinery guards weren't soldiers, just contracted grunts. Some surrendered instantly, others fired until they were cut down. We moved fast, room to room, floor to floor. Our objective, overload the central reactor, set the fuel tanks to chain detonate, and get out before the whole place lit up. I was on the ground, rifle in hand. My boots were soaked in coolant and blood. Decker was 2 levels above me, keeping comms open and eyes on exits. Ramos was down in the core, bypassing the lockdown protocol. And Troy? He was where he always was, in the thick of it, clearing the upper levels with a shotgun and a bad attitude. "This place is bigger than it looked on scans," Ramos grunted over comms. "It's gonna blow bigger, too." "How much time do we have?" I asked. 7 minutes. Maybe. That wasn't enough time. Not for the wounded. Not for the last ship that hadn't docked yet. I looked back. There were civilians here. Unpaid labor, techs, janitors. People who didn't even know their planet powered a war machine. They were screaming, hiding, running. We couldn't leave them. I radioed to Resolve. "Evac route Delta. Route all extraction to East Sector tunnels. Bring every shuttle." Decker paused. "We'll be cutting it close." Close is good enough. The blast could be seen from orbit. The whole southern refinery chain went up in an orange plume that turned the sky into a second sun. The shockwave cracked mountain ranges and sent aftershocks rippling for hours. We lost 5 ships, but we crippled the Paladin fleets, and we saved over 600 civilians. Back at the graveyard, there was no celebration, only silence, faces that didn't know whether to feel proud or sick. That's what war does. It robs you of clarity. I found Troy on the external deck later that cycle. He was sitting on a supply crate, staring at the stars, a flask in his hand. "They're calling you a butcher now," he said, not looking at me. "Who is?" "Council channels, even some independents. They're spinning Narix as a civilian massacre. Claim we hit a med compound, blaming us for seismic deaths." I sat beside him. "They always lie louder when they're scared." He nodded. "I had to shoot a kid, Beck," he said quietly. "One of the guards. Couldn't have been older than 16. He didn't even know how to hold his weapon right, but he aimed it, and I pulled the trigger." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. After a while, he looked at me. "You ever wonder if we're still the good guys?" I looked back at the stars. "No," I said, "because good guys don't survive this kind of war. But I know we're better than them. And sometimes, that's all we've got." 3 days later, Earth came under siege. A council-aligned splinter group, the Centauri Wardens, launched a surprise strike on the orbital shield generators over the North American hemisphere. They used a stealth drop, 2 corvettes, and insider codes. No one saw it coming. 32,000 dead in the first hour. And they didn't stop. Council ships arrived in Earth's orbit within a day. Not a fleet, not yet, but enough to trigger mass panic. Earth's government called for full mobilization. But here's the thing. They didn't ask me to come back. Roe went silent. Earth's leadership fractured. Half wanted to continue backing the resistance. The other half wanted to negotiate, to cut the losses, and let the outer colonies burn. That was the first time I felt it. Not fear, not grief. Betrayal. We had given everything. Risked lives, freed prisoners, shattered supply lines, and now Earth was cracking. I punched the console in my quarters until my hand split open. They called for a summit. Secret, off-world, neutral ground, council envoys, Earth leaders, a few other major system reps. And they asked me to come, not as a soldier, as a warning. They wanted to parade me like a mad dog, say, "Look what your rebellion created." Troy told me not to go. Ramos said it was a trap. Decker just stared at me. "You already know you're going," he finally said. I nodded. "Yeah." "Then take this." He handed me a small data chip. "What is it?" "Evidence of everything we've done, everything they've done, and the cost." "Why?" "In case they try to rewrite it." I left Sovereign Resolve under Troy's command. I flew into the belly of the Council's shadow with nothing but a chip, a voice, and the knowledge that every step forward might be my last. They had left the Varians to die. Now I was walking into the den of those same murderers, unarmed. But I wasn't afraid. Because I carried more than data. I carried the names of everyone they tried to erase, and I would not let them be forgotten. They held the summit on Cestus Prime, a diplomatic station floating in neutral orbit. Built centuries ago as a temple for reason, it looked like a cathedral made of steel and silence. Tall spires, glowing panels, halls that echoed every footstep like ghosts were following you. Security was suffocating. Gunships floated in anchor positions. Drones buzzed overhead. Each delegation was escorted in by armored guards, weapons holstered, but hands always near triggers. This wasn't diplomacy. This was theater, a show for a dying system. They let me in last, no cuffs, no chains, just heavily armed soldiers behind me and a sensor collar around my neck that would trigger if I made any sudden moves or tried to broadcast a signal. A leash, basically. I walked through the grand entrance of the Hall of Accord as the eyes of the galaxy turned to me. The delegates stood in semicircles, council reps, robed in silver and red, Earth's officials, row among them, flanked by political scavengers. A few fringe world ambassadors stood on the edges, clearly uncomfortable. And there I was, the rebel captain, the terrorist, the man with ash in his coat and war in his eyes. No one said my name. No one needed to. They all knew who I was. Rowe was the first to step forward. "Captain Beck," he said, "you stand here at great risk." I shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. Then the council envoy spoke. Her name was Marilla Thorin, High Chancellor of Policy Enforcement. Her voice was the kind that pretended to be calm, but was soaked in venom. "You come here with blood on your hands," she said. "Fugitives do not belong in these halls." "Neither do butchers," I replied. That silenced the room. I could feel her fury, but she smiled through it. "The rebellion is crumbling," she said. "You've provoked genocide. You've destabilized systems. You've poisoned the minds of fringe worlds with delusions of freedom. All for what? Vengeance?" "No," I said. "Justice." She took a step forward. "You murdered workers on Narix. You crippled trade. You shattered the Council's medical chain on Cedar Ring. You've dragged humanity into darkness." I held up the drive Decker gave me. "You want to talk about darkness? Let's talk about Project Lustrum, about bioweapons, about test subjects tortured in glass cells while the Council watched and recorded." Rowe's eyes widened. Thorin paled, just a flash. I slid the drive across the table. "This contains everything," I said. "Logs, experiments, coordinates. Orders signed with your clearance." She didn't touch it. Rowe looked around, reading the tension. "Play it," he said. A technician brought up the hollows. What followed was 30 minutes of quiet horror. Footage of the Deep Space Station. Humans in pods. Virians mutilated and injected with experimental serums. Council agents overseeing the testing with cold detachment. Names, dates, signatures, all verifiable. You could feel the air change. Even Earth's politicians, used to lying for a living, looked shaken. Thorin didn't speak until it ended. She didn't deny it. She didn't need to. Instead, she said, "We did what we had to do, to maintain order." That was the moment diplomacy died. Ro stepped forward. "You call that order?" "It's survival," she said. "No, it's extermination." Thorin turned to the assembly. "This rebellion is not righteous. It is infection, and we offered Earth a chance to cleanse itself." Ro stared at her. "And now?" "Now?" She smiled. "Now we burn the infected out." The lights cut. Gunfire erupted. It was a trap. Chaos is louder than war. People screamed. Plasma bolts tore across the hall. Security bots activated, but they weren't defending anyone. They turned on the Independents first. One ambassador took a blast to the face. Another was thrown into a pillar. I ducked behind the table. Ro was on the floor, bleeding from the shoulder. His security fought like devils, but they were outnumbered. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a purge. The council had never intended to talk. They had gathered the remaining neutrals and dissidents in one place, and now they were erasing them all. But they'd made one mistake. They brought me. The collar around my neck pinged, a soft beep, counting down to execution. I grabbed the drive, yanked the connector from my coat, and slammed it into the base of the central council table, jamming it into the emergency override port. "Decker," I whispered. "Now." Miles away, in a stolen control room on the station's maintenance ring, Decker's voice answered. "Copy. Broadcasting everything." The drive's contents, the war crimes, the orders, the footage, began streaming across every open civilian channel, council-controlled or not. They'd tried to kill the truth in this chamber. Now it was screaming across the galaxy. A council soldier charged me. I slammed his head into the table and took his weapon, and then I stopped being a guest. I started being a soldier again. I moved like instinct. Gun raised, target to target, clean shots, controlled bursts. I cleared 3 soldiers before reaching Ro. "You alive?" I asked. "Barely." I pulled him to cover. "What the hell were you thinking?" he grunted. "I didn't know." "Yes, you did," he coughed. "But you came anyway. That's what makes you a threat." I didn't reply. A frag grenade rolled past us. I kicked it under the table and dragged Ro back just before it exploded. The sound ruptured my ears, and the blast sent shards into my arm. I barely felt it. Somewhere across the hall, Troy's voice cracked through my earpiece. "Beck, reinforcements inbound. I brought the resolve. We're blowing the sidewall. 10 seconds." I yanked Ro up. "Get ready to run." The blast hit like a thunderclap. The far wall ruptured. Metal and glass raining down as the Sovereign resolve descended into the breach. Engines screaming, guns blazing. Her belly turret opened fire on the Council's last soldiers, tearing them apart before they could regroup. Grapple lines dropped. I hooked Ro in and slammed the retract. We rose like angels on wires, smoke below us, fire all around. Once aboard, I dragged Ro to medbay. "Stabilize him," I barked. The med officer nodded, already at work. Troy grabbed my shoulder as I entered the bridge. "You did it," he said. "The whole damn galaxy's watching the stream. Everyone's seeing what the Council did." And riots just broke out on 3 core worlds. 4 Council envoys are in hiding. Half the fringe systems declared neutrality. You started the fire, Beck. Now it's spreading faster than they can put it out. I nodded once. "Then we don't stop now." "Where to?" I looked at the tactical map. "The heart. We take the fight to the core. No more playing defense, no more waiting. We bring war to their doorstep." Decker grinned. Ramos punched the nav console. Troy cracked his knuckles. The crew, once outlaws, now soldiers, turned toward a future soaked in fire and possibility. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was revolution. And we weren't asking for a seat at their table. We were flipping it over. War used to be about territory. Then it was about resources. Now, it was about memory, about what would be remembered, and who would do the remembering. The Council thought they could rewrite history by erasing us, by silencing our voices, sterilizing dissent, making the galaxy believe that order meant obedience, that rebellion was madness. But humanity didn't obey well, and we never forgot. We flew into the core systems 6 days after the Summit massacre. 600 ships, human-made, retrofitted, or barely held together with bolts and fury. Old mining freighters turned gunboats, research vessels rearmed with plasma banks, cargo ships with cannons welded onto their hulls like duct-taped fury. It wasn't a fleet. It was a mob with teeth. But we were angry, and that made us dangerous. The Sovereign resolve led the charge. I stood on the bridge in full combat gear, my ribs still aching from the blast on Cestus Prime. Across the viewport, the Council's homeworld loomed. Alrexia, the shining jewel of hypocrisy. A planet paved with wealth stolen from colonies left to rot. It was surrounded by 10 orbital defense rings. 3 of them were already burning. Earth had committed. After the truth broadcast, Earth's fleet fractured, half siding with us, half defecting into hiding. But the half that remained loyal to freedom? They didn't wait. They struck the first ring a day before we arrived. And now we were going to finish it. "Targeting array locked," Decker barked. "Enemy warships en route. Full fleet scramble. We've got 3 minutes, Beck." I keyed the comms, sending a transmission to all ships. "This is Captain Beck, Sovereign Resolve. You know why we're here. You've seen what they've done, what they're capable of. This is not about vengeance. It's not even about justice anymore." I paused. This is about ending it. For every refugee they left to die, for every colony they stripped bare, for every voice they silenced. Today, the Council learns that we're not afraid anymore. I didn't sign off. I just cut the feed and said, "Fire." The first wave hit us like a fist. Council warships swarmed in classic formations, disciplined, cold, mathematical. They moved like chess pieces, but we fought like wolves. Troy took command of the flank line, leading 5 refit cruisers in a side-strafing attack that ripped through the enemy's fuel carriers. The explosion took out 2 ships on our side, but it stalled their middle rank long enough for our forward line to punch through. Resolve didn't stop moving. We dove straight at the central spire of the Council's orbital fortress, dodging rail fire, sending torpedoes screaming toward anything with a Council emblem on it. Alarms rang. Consoles burst into sparks. One of our auxiliary engines failed, but Ramos rerouted the power manually, his hands burned raw by plasma backwash. "We've got hull breaches on decks 4 and 5, Decker shouted. "Seal them," I ordered. "Anyone not in armor gets into the core ring now." From the medbay, Rowe patched through on audio. "Beck," he said, weak but firm. "They're trying to activate the Purge protocol." "On Alrexia?" "Everywhere. They're prepared to sterilize half their own systems just to end this war." "Do you have proof?" "I'm uploading it to your core now. Get it out. If I die down here, the story doesn't." I clenched my jaw. "You're not dying." He didn't respond. We breached the station hull with a kinetic battering ram fired from Resolve's underbelly, something Ramos had built from a mining drill and 4 cargo thrusters. It hit with enough force to tear a hole straight through Ring 4. I led the boarding team personally. Helmet on, rifle hot. The breach chamber was chaos, debris spinning, gravity half failing, Council guards already waiting. We moved fast, controlled bursts, no mercy. This wasn't diplomacy anymore. We reached the central command deck after 27 minutes of brutal corridor warfare. The air stank of blood and melted steel. Inside the core, we found her, Chancellor Marilla Thorin, standing at the center of the override tower, her back to us, unarmed. I aimed. She turned slowly. "Do it," she said. "You'll make me a martyr." "You already made yourself a monster," I replied. She smiled. "History will forget you, Beck. You and your little pirate fleet. The Council will rebuild." I stepped closer. "You still don't get it," I said quietly. "There's not going to be a council left to rebuild." She laughed. I fired once, not a killing shot, but a disabling one. Her leg snapped beneath her as she collapsed. Blood sprayed across the control panel. I walked to the core, pulled out the drive Ro had sent, plugged it in. Every file, every protocol, every plan, broadcast again. This time, from the Council's own beacon array. The truth went live system-wide. People across the galaxy saw the sterilization orders, the directives to test weapons on human colonies, footage of Alrexia's own population being marked for cleansing when dissent grew too strong. They saw Thorin's signature on every document. This wasn't a rebellion anymore. This was the fall of an empire. But it came with a price. From the far side of the system, the Council's last fleet arrived. 6 dreadnoughts, untouched, hidden, their ace in the hole. We didn't have the strength to stop them. Troy called over comms. "We've lost half the fleet. We don't have enough ships to hold them." "They'll fire on the planet," Decker added. "They'll kill their own people just to bury this." Ro patched in. "I can override the beacon shields from here, but someone has to stay behind to keep the line open." I knew what that meant. "No," I said. "We find another way." "There's no time. We can pull you out." He interrupted me. "Beck, let me do this. I helped build this system. It's only right I tear it down." I stood in silence. Then I said, "We'll buy you time." We turned resolve toward the fleet. We were outgunned, outnumbered, but not out of fight. The ship was breaking apart. Whole plates missing from her flank. Systems flickering, half the crew wounded. And still, we went forward. The dreadnoughts opened fire. We dodged the first barrage. Sent our final torpedoes screaming back. The second barrage ripped through our midsection. Decompression alarms blared. I was thrown into the bulkhead, shoulder dislocated. Blood in my mouth. Screams behind me. Still, we moved forward. Ro's voice came through. "Lines open. They can see everything. Just hold them a little longer." "I will," I whispered. And then we were face to face with death. I don't remember the final blast. Only that I woke up in debris, floating, helmet cracked, pressure failing. The Sovereign resolve was gone. She'd gone down like a knife in the throat of a god. The dreadnoughts, disabled, 2 destroyed. 1 shattered completely when Ro detonated the central command node during his final override. And the broadcast? It never stopped. The whole galaxy saw it. Not just once, on loop. Over and over. Truth on repeat. They pulled me from the wreckage 2 days later. A rescue team from a fringe medical ship found my beacon in the debris belt. They brought me back to Earth. The war was over. The Council collapsed within weeks. Alrexia declared independence. The Paladins disbanded, hunted in some sectors, imprisoned in others. A new alliance formed. Loosely connected, fiercely independent. Systems now ruled by their own citizens, not bureaucrats in robes. And Earth? Earth finally found its spine. They honored Ro with a monument. But they never built one for me. I didn't want one. I didn't want statues, or medals, or speeches. I just wanted silence. I live now in the southern ruins of Titan's old orbital zone. A cabin made from a broken satellite dish, patched with scraps of Resolve's old outer hull. It's cold, quiet, peaceful. Sometimes children come by. They ask if I was really him, if I really stood up and said, "We remember," if I really flew into the fire for people I didn't even know. I tell them no, that it wasn't me, that it was us. All of us, because the council didn't fall from a bullet. It fell from memory, and we made sure it would never be forgotten again.